And then just as we start this video, a lot of folks I know are listening to them later while they're doing dishes, or perhaps some chores, or perhaps you know, this is just soothing listening on your daily walk. So if that's true and you're just listening on, I'm going to give a little overview. And for those of you watching, I'm going to share my screen just for a moment. Oh, there we go. I think that's what I want to be looking at. And what we're going to pull up here is the Great River School website. And I want to just give a tour to remind folks what's going on. And so this Great River School front page still likely has a notice letting you know that we're operating in not regular times or days. And then specifically, as this website pulls up, I just want to update families and folks that we've got below the picture that welcomes you a reminder here to click to learn more about our Returning to School in Fall 2020 plan, and then all links to past community newsletters. And then what we also have is a reminder that our Heron to Go service, which is our school kitchen and nutrition program, makes delicious meals affordably priced to feed 5, and they come frozen. You pick them up, you heat them up, and they are delicious. They're very popular. And so if you're interested in Heron to Go, that's here too. And so what I'm going to do is click here just to give folks a little reminder of our return plan that we announced last Thursday, in case you're looking for that. And so as this loads up, I'll just remind folks to put answer or questions you might have into the Q&A. And I've spent already, I think 8, 10, let's see, I've done 5 community forums where we're working on several different priorities. So health and safety, communications, also looking at student support, and then some community curriculum forums started today. And what we're doing is we're looking at the community's really vision and voices for suggestions for things that are important for what our priorities are as a community, and then really looking also at how we can integrate those suggestions as our licensed guides and educators and our classroom assistants and education paraprofessionals and all of our staff at Great River School really work to nail down specific plans this August as we head into school in a month. And so this return page will just remind you what we announced last Thursday, that we're starting the year in distance learning. Specifically, that means we're going to provide structured daily learning guidance for most students to be carrying out at home Monday through Friday. Specifically, as I scroll down here pretty quickly past my head of school message from a couple weeks ago, I just want to remind folks that we're monitoring viral activity, and we're also monitoring our ability to prepare, implement, and then monitor safety measures and mitigation measures. So as you look at this graph here, specifically what you're looking at is that as we have increasing viral activity and or as we're just starting to orient our community to mitigation measures, we're likely going to be in distance learning. And we'd have to see decreasing viral activity as well as increased success with mitigation measures in order to move from distance learning to a hybrid or in-person model. As I say that, I will just remind folks that if we do move to hybrid sometime this year, and even if we move to in-person sometime this year, this whole school year, everyone should be prepared for us on very to let you know that we may have to go back to distance learning, either because regionally or locally or in our school building or community, we have either a positive case or the Department of Health advises us we should pull back. And so as we start in distance learning, what we're looking for is to follow the state's guidance that will use our county-specific data to be making decisions. The county-specific data is updated this coming Thursday from last Thursday. So my regular Thursday announcement this Thursday will be to look at that data and indicate where the trends are at, what it means for us. Specifically, also we'll be looking to make local decisions on our ability to prepare locally, on the mitigation steps we'll take locally, and then community safety measures. And then we're also looking to reevaluate regularly, and what we're trying to do specifically is talk about, are the health outcomes locally or regionally better than expected, or are they declining in cases per 10,000? If so, we're likely to move more toward in-person learning. Also then, if health outcomes are worse, rising, or variable and not predictable, we're more likely to stay with distance learning. We give you a picture here. On the screencast here, we show September through June, and trying to get to you that approximately every 6 weeks, monitoring the health outcomes in counties of the children we serve, and then we will also be then announcing what our likely next steps are for the next area. So as we monitor health outcomes through September, you should look in the first week or two of October for an announcement of what we'll be doing in the next period of time. And so I want to give you these indicators of dates, though, as regular times at which we are likely to look at the health outcomes and then be looking to make a transition announcement approximately 5 to 10 days at least before these dates. And my goal is to give families at least 2 weeks notice before we change any model. So your family's option, again, you have an option for care and supervision at school. If your family is an essential working qualifying family, either Tier 1 essential workers or Tier 2, if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, or if your family needs care and supervision during the day for a variety of reasons. That could be to require employment, that could be your child has a specific learning plan that requires more in-person attention and time. You just be in touch with us. I anticipate that we will be able to provide care and supervision to all children who qualify in these 3 categories. If for some reason we are overwhelmed with care and supervision, then we will specifically be looking for families who qualify for free and reduced lunch and qualify as essential workers. However, I just want to let you know that we're prepared, I believe, based on our survey results, to provide care for all 3 of these categories. We do remind you that 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. will be supervised work on academic work through a distance learning program at school. Not necessarily supervised by your regular classroom teacher, however, supervised by a Great River adult who's trained in what we're doing and oriented and can guide students in responsibilities and work completion. And then 7:30 to 9 and 2 to 5:30 are available just like they were before the pandemic for before and after care. And this is a slide scale also, so do let us know if you need that. And then just the last thing I'm going to scroll down to is reminding you that we are still in the midst here of our decision-making timeline. And so right now, on August, I believe, oh geez, let's remind me the date, the 11th, we're in the second week of some working sessions with volunteers, again, going through that community review process that I had talked about. And here it says final plans to the community on 8/15. And specifically, we actually gave you the plans a little bit early last week, saying that we're going to start in distance learning. And so in terms of final plans, of final specific schedules, final specific plans on how to meet your student needs, we really need the community response to the survey we sent out last week. And so that survey, I really want everyone to finish that survey before the 13th, which is just 2 days from right now. So it's the 13th actually, less than 36 hours from right now. So if you could finish that in the next 30 hours, that would be wonderful. That survey again was sent out by email again today, and I also left everyone a voicemail. And then so also we are working through these community forums right now, reviewing all the feedback we've gathered, and then the final plans that are announced here to the community. There will be some more detail next week, but really you should be looking for things like specific school supplies, specific schedules, and specific needs for families to prepare to be coming from your teachers and educators after they've really had a time to drill down to very specific answers. And so I'll be taking on the bulk of the responsibility to provide more detail over the next few weeks, but we really gave you some final plans about distance learning last week. And now as we implement all the details to make that plan work really well, I just want to really set expectations that you understand that we still are having this priorities of a healthy community, safe learning environment for everybody, and then strong values in our mission and vision. And so as we go down here, I would just remind you that this still applies. We want you to get involved. If you want to be involved, you can email office@greatriverschool.org or a direct line to call or text is listed here, and that goes actually directly to me. So the overview of the page is done. Thank you for following along. And now we're going to get to some questions from our community. So thanks for folks for asking questions, and we'll just pick this up where it is. All right, first question is from Jay Turner Bargain. I have 2 returning 2nd graders and a 5th grader coming to Great River for the first time. We are all wondering if classroom groups will have any in-person masked and distance outdoor meetups to meet the classmates again for the first time. I can report that we are working on those specific plans, And one of the things the distance learning plan allows us to do is specifically prepare to have distanced outdoor meetings, likely near school campus, but for some families and or some groups, we'll be also creatively looking for ways to use safe to visit outdoor areas and public parks that could be away from campus. So we'll be utilizing the Como Woodlands area that's near our campus, possibly also the parks that are near our campus. But especially for your returning second graders and fifth graders, yes, though we will likely not have a gathering that includes the entire classroom community until we're really confident in our mitigation strategies implementation. So look for those invitations to be coming, individually. We'll be keeping an eye on accessibility and equity. We're keeping those groups small, but then we'll be looking to be as flexible as we possibly can to set times for small groups to meet successfully and practice mitigation and also get to see each other. So we really want to see faces. We really will still want to get to know each other corporeally in person, but we will be training by video first in what those mitigation strategies will be about masks and physical distancing and being outside. And then those invitations will likely come over, the first 2 to 6 weeks of the school year. And then we've got another question here. If our children are doing distance learning at GRS, do you have the on campus to support that? And we are still, again, I'm really heartfeltly asking you to finish all the surveys by the 13th so that we know who needs a computer or device. And so I don't think that you'll have to bring your own computer device into school. I think that we will be prepared to cover that need at school. Community planning group, going to convene all year as things change, and will be in-person teacher meet and greet.
Okay, forgive me, everyone. I think my audio had shut off, so I will start with Jessica's question again, just as I try to get all hooked up also again to our Zoom call. Okay, so please chat me if you can't hear me now. I don't have Holly here as a backup right now, so thank you if you can. We are going to be convening the planning group all year, and so let me pull up that graphic again. And so specifically, the groups that we have convened are working on not only curriculum, but also communication, student support, and health and safety. And we're going to be, let's see, having the second and third meetings of those groups this week and early next. And then the pre-planning portion of those groups will pause, and we'll start to use those groups as a format to regularly check in with each other and then identify who and how we can be knowing if we can do better, or if something's working well, we want to keep it around. If something's not working, we want to change it. And so this revised draft plans will turn into a feedback about what's going on, gathering community feedback, and then really a constant working session through the year on how to revise and refine and hear what's working and what's not. Thank you for the question. Here's another question. Jenny asks, hey Sam, as parents, we struggled in the spring and anticipate the same in the fall with supporting our students in distance learning. DL seems to merit more parent support, but both middle school and Montessori push for independence. Any advice and guidance would be appreciated. Thank you for asking that question also. Specifically, I will identify that I've been saying in these video calls that one thing we really want to do is we want to identify essential work at home for students to do. And so that's work that's needed, that's work that students are capable of doing, and that's work that either they can figure out themselves, or in addition to being able to figure out themselves, there might be some work that if you, say, spend some time training your student in, they might be able to take responsibility for that work. And so I think I had said in the elementary level, for instance, cleaning one area of the house or being responsible for sweeping and organizing the entryway or shoes or some belongings that often get sort of disarrayed. Specifically, I'm thinking that at the older ages, 7th through 12th grade, say, it's really important to actually identify that students are an essential part of the family, making sure that just regular daily things are accomplished, such as feeding and laundering and cleaning and keeping up the living environment. And so I have been identifying those as ways that we expect to work. And then Jenny, just to go into a little bit of detail of what I've been saying, is that if your student's in 1st through 6th year, you want to generally plan on that student engaging in about 45 minutes a day of that kind of meaningful, essential family work at home, and or work that's meaningful to them that overlaps with responsibility at school. So that could be writing or reading or engaging in a follow-up lesson or research, right? So that could really be anything from growing seedlings to observing plants. This could be plants on the windowsill or some experiment that you're sort of charting the progress of. So it doesn't require any particular household, just that you would engage in a meaningful way as a student with your work and your household also. And then for 7th through 12th grade students, ages 12 to 18, we're aiming for 75 minutes a day of meaningful work. And so starting that as part of a plan right now, I think, Jenny, would be useful. So I would suggest choose an area of the house to take responsibility for and make it a daily routine to visit that area, make a checklist of things to check on and do, and really care for that area of the house. Also, for, say, a younger student, it could be helping prepare meals, and for an older student, it could be planning those meals. And so make a list, plan ahead, execute on preparing the meal, and then something that I think is not often a part of family life would be taking a little feedback and asking, how did that go? And so what we do in our community meetings is often say, what went well, what could go better, and then compliments and thank yous. And so we'll be likely looking to provide some language, vocabulary, and structures for you at home on how to, what we're looking for those 45 minutes in the elementary or 75 minutes in the adolescent of doing things at home. And then I also suppose I want to just touch on, in the springtime, I heard a family recently describe, we went basically into crisis education, learning by doing. And so no one was prepared on March 13th, say, to implement a completely online school on March 18th. And that's what we attempted. We did our best, and there are many things that can definitely improve. So then secondly, I would say that what we're doing this fall is we're entering a known time of unpredictability. And because it's known, we shouldn't act, I suppose, as surprised. And then as adults, I just want to ask us all, and as students, if you're a student watching this, ask us all to think about how can we take responsibility to make this fall meaningful? So not waiting for regular school, quote unquote, to come back, not waiting just until, say, this interruption to what we expected our school life to be like to end before we do something meaningful, but how do we make this time meaningful when we know we have to physically distance, when we know many of our peers and friends, and even maybe we can't be physically on site at school? How do we still stay connected, and how do we still make our learning at home time meaningful? And likely, Jenny, and your students and everyone else who's wondering about this, you're going to want to engage in a real conversation where the students take some of the ownership and leadership about what would make their learning meaningful this fall. And so that's something as guides, I know, for ages 6 all the way through age 18, we're thinking about how to reinforce that also. So, make a list of responsibilities as a family, and then identify with your student which ones they think they can meet independently, and then be accountable. Have a regular time where that student reports back, to themselves or to the family or to you on the accountability. And so, ideally we start with things that we can succeed at easily, and then we know that we're going to add more challenges on as the year goes on, and that kind of meaningful development is what we're asking you to do at home. If you're a family who's really concerned about not being able to supervise a student all day through distance learning, please start the conversation now that actually the student is going to be independent sometimes, and that may look like 30 minutes of independence and then coming back for accountability about, were you able to attempt that work? Were you able to finish that household chore? Were you able to engage meaningfully in that thing your teacher said or not? And what do you need help with? So as a parent, what you're, I think, looking to do is build up the stamina of your student to first work for short intervals and not be asking questions until that interval ends. And then they can ask questions of you in a set scheduled time, and you're looking to space out that kind of persistence and work. So Just giving you a long answer to a complicated question. Thank you for your patience, though. And then in terms of purchasing school supplies, I'll answer 3 common questions now that all our Q&A generally is done. And thank you, Holly, for prompting me with that one. Holly is in again. I'm going to promote Holly to being a panelist so that we can use our radio banter to try to keep our podcast listeners engaged. Hello, Holly, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. You also, Holly, are going to be the one who tells me, thank goodness, if, say, my phone turns off in the middle of answering a question, or if I sound like a robot, okay? Okay. So specifically, 3 common questions. One is, what kind of supplies do we need for school? So my short answer is, we will send you specific supplies, likely by September 1st or before, but it's going to be nothing super special or hard to find. And so what I'm talking about are implements to write with, implements to create things with, and then materials with which to do those things, like pen, pencil, highlighter. At the adolescent level, we're talking about pencil, likely colored pencil, which is also, you could do adolescent, but in the elementary level, pencil, colored pencil. We're talking about scissors and tape, likely. And then we're also talking about, a single work journal or some notebooks that are sturdy, but that you can write in. And so in terms of total cost for your family, I'm aiming to make it extremely affordable and easy to procure. If there are any specialized materials such as print-offs or photocopies or copies, sturdy or laminated or cardstock copies of Montessori materials, those things we will be aiming to provide to you over a period of time. I suppose I also want to orient everyone to the idea that September 8th is the first official day of school. We will be, holding our first meetings that day, likely online. We will have given you the prior week some orientation to how to get into the system that we're going to use this year. That we won't be using multiple systems this coming year. Soon, in the next couple weeks, I'll be ready to orient you to the system we will be using, but it'll be one password for a student to see all the things they need to see. And in there, they can touch a button and get a hold of an adult. They can ask a question on an assignment in the same place the assignment is posted. They can have appropriate conversations within that forum online. That's for older students. And for younger students, there won't be going into an email to click a link to get to a classroom, to click a link to get to a video. It will all be in one place. So much less executive functioning spent on how do I get to the thing. So with that said, September 8th won't be a day where you're going to spend the whole day writing in your notebook and cutting with your scissors and using your tape. September 8th will be a day where we're talking about how to make this year meaningful. So likely you're going to want to be, as a family, prepared to make a good list of what is meaningful work at home. And if you've already attempted that a couple times, that'll be even better. Also, though, you'll want to be ready for school to be a little more oriented in how do we affect our behavior for the first few weeks, and a little less oriented on what facts did you garner from your guide today. In that we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about not only how to make our work meaningful, but probably engaging some things that build habits that make for good work, but not necessarily around the specific content you might expect from school, such as, constructing in a very hands-on project and then reporting back to a group of students online to practice reporting back. Likely will be a lot of the habits we're building. Practicing, telling stories about your day or your pets or your home or your experiences in a way that gets you used to telling stories about yourself and listening to others. We'll be doing a lot of that because that skill is really applicable learning on Zoom. And so school supplies, we're not going to put you in a position where you have to gather a lot of stuff for the first day of school. And generally, we're aiming to identify things that most folks likely have access to or already have at home, like a writing utensil, pad of paper, and or a notebook. But I can confidently say that every student should have at least a work journal, like a notebook, and access to writing utensils. And so again, those are the kind of things, though, if you don't have them at home, let us know and we'll help you get the right thing for sure. And then every student will need access to a digital device and an internet signal. And so that's where we're gathering, again, feedback from you through the survey we have sent. We do know that all the families have gotten it. We also have confirmed that all the families know how to fill it out. And so if you need any help, again, please reach out to us. Okay. And then I think we just got one last question. Talked about journals. Is that something to start on now? And what does that look like for a first-year student? Becca, you absolutely could start for a first-year student, either incoming in first year or going into second year. It'd be totally appropriate to have a daily journal where a drawing of the day or a plan for the day is made. And that could be, again, in words and letters. That could be in physical descriptions that are drawings. That could be really putting your hands on the materials you're manipulating to communicate your thinking is the practice that we're looking to start with, say, a first year or going into second year student. And if you started that kind of practice, I think you'd be looking to answer, you know, in the morning, what's the plan for the day? What's the meaningful work I can be responsible for? And you're choosing, you know, 2 or 3 things, and you're identifying what you can get done. And then maybe at the end of the day or the end of those tasks or the next day, you're saying, what went well? What could improve? What's something I'm grateful for? And so just that format is something that I think you could use with any age student, but in particular with the first year student. So the first year who is already, say, writing or reading, you know, they can be a little more independent doing that, but I would still, as an adult, get them in the habit of asking those questions of, you know, what's my plan after I finish? What went well? What could go better? What am I grateful for about it? So that you're practicing that cycle of going back to your experience, reflecting on it, and changing your plan going forward. Well, that's all the questions. Holly, any other common questions that you think we should answer just for folks in general?
I would like to remind people to, if you haven't, go to our website /return and view the previous sessions like this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So here I am on that page, and if you just keep scrolling down, just scroll, and then when you think, oh, it can't be this far, just keep scrolling. Just go past the ways that you can help at home, like giving us feedback, washing your hands, social distancing, wearing a mask, staying connected. Keep going, and look, there they are. So all the forums are there. The last one from August 6th, and then another one from the 4th, and then a previous one from the 30th. And so all the way back, you'll see that my wardrobe has not varied much. So if you want to give me any wardrobe feedback, go for it. But really the most important thing is that in the first, say, 10 minutes of each of these, I do generally give a fact update on what's happened since the past week. But there can be a thing to listen to just so you get some explanation, for instance, of the feedback we've gotten, how we made the decisions we did, and then on the 6th, the real overview of the announcement we made. I know, Holly, a lot of folks are asking questions. You know, we made this distance learning, don't get dizzy, everybody. We made this distance learning announcements, right? So we have this picture, these 5 days of what to do. And a lot of folks are saying, okay, but what's the specific schedule? And please let me know, because I have to know when to schedule, say, someone to come to my house so that I can help my kid learn, or someone to come to my house just to engage with my kid in a way. And so we're gonna get the schedules as soon as possible. And one thing we're balancing right now is sanity. We've told you we're doing distance learning. That's a final plan for the first few weeks at least, so that you can plan on it. I've let you know also that we're going to be assessing that plan, and if all health outcomes look great and stable or declining, and we are approved by the state to go to a more in-person model, we will let you know at least 2 weeks before October 19th, and then through the rest of the year, I'm aiming for at least 5 to 10 days before any changes. And so, you know, distance learning will be that first real chunk of the year to get oriented in how to do this well together. I don't know the specific schedules right now, and instead of telling you what I think the likely proposals are that'll be adopted, I can say that generally the learning day still will fall between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. And that before 9, we'll still be offering before care, and after 2, we'll still offer after care. I know that we're going to focus on really making good connections and having a lot of chances for one-on-one feedback and one-on-one calls as much as possible, which means you'll likely get a call from an adult at Great River. It may not be, say, the lead guide or teacher that you know primarily you're thinking of that day. But what I do know is that we're coming up with schedules that allow us to really meet the outcomes that we've heard from our families and our students that work the best in this model. And then secondly, in terms of specific schedules and, you know, when will my math course be? I will be ready, you know, before, say, September to give you some heads up about more specifics. And so, you know, we'll communicate with you all. The next family, the next big family newsletter is coming out on August 20th. and then the following one is coming out 2 weeks after that in September. But if we do have specific updates for age groups about schedules, we'll be sending those, and I'll be mentioning them here in this call too. And so I will also just then come down to one of the more useful references, which I think is in the middle of the page, which is here you're just reminding that if we go, say, from distance learning to a hybrid, we will be moving from 5 days a week of distance learning to 3 days a week of distance learning for whatever group you're in. I can confidently say we won't be letting you know your group before September 1st, but likely in early September, we'd let you know a group. And again, remember, I'm guaranteeing you right now, we're not switching from a distance learning model to a hybrid model until at least October 19th. And we're only going to do that if those health outcomes indicate that that's a safe move to make. And then the next one that I think is useful is that this still applies. That use this chart to identify which family group you fall in, and then this chart is still a referenceable and important chart to use about how your students will attend in the fall. And I think we got a couple more questions, Holly, so I'll pull those up. Okay,
Yes,
here
we
we go. Yeah. So Kelly asks, do you want to read Kelly's question there, Holly?
Sure. Kelly says, can you give my high schoolers a tiny glimpse of what their typical day will look like when they have school from 9 to 2? For example, maybe how much of their day will be indie work and how much will be meeting in classes?
Well, so Kelly, I will specifically say that I know that teacher groups are starting to meet with the program director, Melanie Peterson-Nafziger, late this week, early next week, to identify both affirmation and critique and slight changes to the proposals that are on the table right now. But one specific is that your students in, say, a 9th through 12th grade setting, instead of having 6 different courses at a time, likely will have fewer. And so you'll be going through, I believe, what's most likely right now is you'll be going through segments of time in which you have a few classes at a time. You do those classes, say, for 3 to 6 weeks, and you really go deeper into them by spending longer in the work period doing them. And so independent work will look a little bit less like task management, the way that it did in our former model, and a little bit more like deeper research and accomplishing a task and really sustaining work through a time period. And then with only a few courses at a time, you've got 3 guides that you're talking to, not 6. And so as you're doing and finishing that project, then when you wrap that up, the next projects that you go to will be in the complementary classes that you didn't already do. And so, for instance, you might have, say, 3 courses together that are a language, a social studies, and literature class. You do those for 4 to 6 weeks. And then your next 3 classes would be the sciences, mathematics, and, say, elective course that you didn't do before. So I can tell you that. I can also say that generally between 9 and 2, the meeting times will be longer together, and we know that you can't be on Zoom for 5 hours and be effective. So it will likely look like lessons, and then time for independent work where there is an adult more structured and available. And we're also looking to incorporate that feedback about more direct accountability for students, with specific reports back. And what I'm really interested in is seeing, especially our 9th through 12th years, identify how they can be accountable to each other to share their work progress. So for now, I can't give you the specifics on how many hours a day of indie work, but I can say we're taking the feedback about habits and the feedback about one-to-one connection, and also the feedback then about really having less different things pulling you in a million directions, and we're incorporating that into our likely proposals. But I want to let the teachers and the program directors really make those final decisions before I, roll that out for you. Amy Whitman says, I'm sorry if you answered this already and I missed it, but have you yet defined who qualifies for the 3rd category of needing care? Holly, have you heard this question before?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, good. Okay. So here's what I'll say. Amy, that 3rd category is me hearing from many families that their student needs a place to be because their employment will be at risk if we do distance learning. And me balancing, and really all of my colleagues who are giving feedback, and all the staff and families giving feedback, that we really want to be sure that all the mitigation and safety protocols on campus are really secure before we even try to come back to a hybrid model or even just provide childcare. And so I'm confident that we can provide childcare on campus in a safe way on September 8th both for guiding learning and before and after care with the number of families who have responded. And so I'm really relying on that survey data. And the reason we can offer that third category of who qualifies as basically self-identifying is that you identify who you are. It's either your student needs it because you need it for employment, or your student needs it because there's likely a very good reason that being in the building is a better place for them to be and learn, including the mitigation and safety realities of being in school, in a school building, in a care building during a pandemic, that our school building might be still the best place for your student to be during the day, rather than finding other ways for them to be cared for and trying to be learning at home. So you self-identify, Amy, and I've just tried to also be very clear that I don't anticipate this happening, but if we did exceed our capacity to provide care because too many families were self-identifying that in that way, then I would have to pull back to only students who qualify for free and reduced lunch and or families who are employed as tier 1 or tier 2 essential workers. So I don't foresee that happening though, because I'm really trusting our consistent survey data from families that generally about 20 to 25% of our families fall in that category of need care through the day, including self-identified families. And generally about 6 or 7 or 8 out of 10 families are either not coming in at all or very reticent to come in without proper feedback from the state. So the numbers we have in counties right now from last week, I will just identify, do say that we would be distance learning in the high school, and that we would be, depending on the county, but I think the most reported county does identify that we would be hybrid in the elementary. That's not the only information, but those are just the qualifying categories we can have. We can't do more in person than those numbers identify. And so you self-identify, Amy. If you guys send your kid in, you get in touch with us, fill out that survey we sent out last week for the 13th, and then we will be prepared to provide that care. Jessica says, oh, will you read Jessica's question, Holly?
Yes, she said, you stated that distance learning could include in-person outdoor classroom stuff. The question is, will we get 2 weeks notice for that type of schedule?
Yes, Jessica, we will do our very best to give you 2 full weeks notice for that type of schedule. And that's where I know, say, between September 8th and October 19th, we will be looking at ways to give you ample time to sign up for the in-person gatherings that we want to hold, and that the distance learning we'll be doing, I generally know we will be doing them, but the reason I don't have a schedule right now is I want to make sure that our educators who will be there with their face and their corporeal body really get a chance to identify the best times to do that. And so there may be some schedules that offer times before a 2-week window, but we will give windows enough that a family who's got to plan 2 weeks ahead to attend successfully can. And we're also identifying that, really frankly, everyone should identify that they're ready to be outside in almost all weather. You know, sort of electrical storms are the only thing we're not going to be outside in. and then secondly, in terms of you know, access to this kind of programming we're talking about, that if you need appropriate wear to be outside, that you would get in touch with us just the same way you get in touch with us if you need a computer, or if you needed, you know, a work journal and a writing utensil. So you let us know if you need that need. But this is really, I think, where the community aspect of the school comes in. When I'm offering on behalf of the school institution to be offering, say, care for students who self-identify as needing it, or you know, galoshes and slickers and boots that you might need. Like, we're going to have to work together to produce this. There's no wonderful grant from the government that allows us to just expand what we can do. I'm seeing that our community is offering to each other right now to allow each other to speak up when they have a need to be met. And so there may be times when we're going to need you all to work together, whether it's like a parent offered a couple weeks ago, offer tutoring to high school or junior high students in mathematics. We're going to need you to also to offer, if you've got extra warm or wet gear, that you can gear for wet weather, not wet things, likely. Warm or wet gear that you can share with others too. So Sinead has a question. Holly, you want to read this for Sinead?
Yes. Perhaps you've addressed this before, but might there be busing for any kids who need school daycare during distance learning?
Well, Sinead, you put your finger, in fact, exactly on our follow-up. So any family who identifies that they're going to need care before on that survey before the 13th, we will follow up then about specific transportation needs. And then we're also looking to follow up about specific transportation needs with anyone who used transportation last year. And then we're working with our provider from last year to identify ways to be consistent with that. So we are looking at how to provide safe transportation. And again, this is just a year, frankly, unlike any other. And we don't have a lot of reliable guidance right now from the state on how to meet our responsibilities. So we just know that we have responsibilities and we're going to do our best to meet them. That's my preface for let us know what you need, and we're going to have to work together to make that happen. Because at this point, with the numbers the way they are, the busing, there'd be very few students on a bus in order to provide safe busing. So open windows, very few students, very spaced out, and we would be looking to have more direct routes, which may need time frames that you're available rather than just one time that you arrive. That's one idea, for instance, but I'm thinking it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks before we have direct answers from our busing company about how to best provide that. Yufeng Berry has a question. What are the learning platforms for elementary school students? So I don't want to make a huge announcement right now because a couple things are still being ironed out about that, but I can identify that we're working with a very well-known platform that integrates with our current system, where we take track of attendance and for junior high and high school students report on assessment and grading. And so for a family right now, last year, you needed a password for Google Classroom, you needed a password for PowerSchool, you might have even needed another password if you were a junior high or high school family, depending on your learning platform. You may need another password for something called ManageBack. So they added up. This year, the program that we're going to use, I think I'll be ready to talk more about next week, but it'll be a one system login that many schools use. And that one system login, I want to be able to give an orientation to in one of these videos. But for elementary students, it means that the classroom setting is a single consistent page with a one password entry point, and it's enclosed, so it can't be receiving external emails. It can't be interrupted from the external internet world the way that last year's system, I think, was more viable or a more viable target for things like that. So for elementary students, it should be much simpler, much more direct this year, and I'll name it next week. I'm just keep you on the edge of your seat so you keep tuning in. That's not really true. I want to give our program directors and teachers time to really make sure that I communicate accurately and don't over communicate before they've committed to some of the things we'll do. But I know it'll be a one password login. It's used by many schools, even around the Twin Cities, and so it's common. What we did see is that for some schools that didn't have very good distance learning experiences last year, this system was one of the few good things those parents reported on. And for some schools using this system, and some teachers that we heard back from, it said that this system really streamlined a lot of the problems about feedback, about sort of quick accessibility to teachers and adult support, and then accessing things like videos or printouts. And so that'll all be able to be housed in one spot this year. That'll be much easier for us. Okay, well, the questions are done. Holly, you got anything else? Yeah.
In the chat.
Yeah.
There's 2 questions, especially for new families. Would you talk a little bit about Wednesdays? Is that a day off?
Oh yeah, thank you, Holly. So I'm actually going to screen share our wonderful graphics just because I really like them. So again, your family's options for childcare are there. I'm going to scroll up here though. And so I will note that in distance learning, all 5 days here have activities that are either computer, book, outdoor, fixing stuff outdoor. We're encouraging, a variety of at-home approaches. So remember those pictures, because as I scroll down, in any of our models, Wednesday is not a day off, but consistently among our models, Wednesday is a day where distance learning is happening. So if we go hybrid, still all students are distance learning on Wednesdays. If we do an in-person model this year, and we would, again, only do an in-person model this year, if the health outcomes in all the counties where we serve students become very stable and very low case count per 10,000, and we see that as a consistent pattern, and so we can work toward a hybrid model, and then because it's going so well everywhere, work toward a scenario that's in person. The reason we're saying plan on distance learning right now on Wednesdays is because that allows us to make sure that the 15 to 25% or more of our students that are home all year are still able to get inclusion in the community, are still able to access their guides in a dedicated way, and that the participation of students who have to still come into school is not interrupted by that Wednesday. They're doing the same distance learning activities, but it's really a way to identify for you that we're being realistic about the work that our guides have to do this year, and that work really requires more preparation to do well than the regular work that still required a lot of preparation last year, right? And so in person, even on an in-person schedule, you are distance learning on Wednesdays, but instead of teachers having to do 2 things at a time, they're getting to dedicate both time to prepare and time to attend to all students from a distance perspective. Now, having started the year distance learning, I don't expect that everyone's on a computer Monday, using a wheel on Tuesday, fishing somewhere on Wednesday. If you're listening as a podcast, this doesn't make sense. But if you're watching at home, you don't have to use a wrench and a screwdriver on Thursday and then set up a tent in your living room on Friday. You can do any of those models. But distance learning on Wednesdays in a hybrid model still means consistently our guides are going to be able to attend to, again, the 15 to 25% or more of students that are staying home because their families are immune vulnerable all year. And so some of our staff are also in that position, and we identified that that was one way actually to establish both social equity and then in terms of accessibility and attention, make our guides available to students by making sure in all the models one day is like that. So it's not a day off, day of more independence in more in-person models. And it could still be a day with, say, a community meeting type schedule to make sure that everyone's always attending those. But it's not a day off, so be careful. You still, in fact, got to do your 45 minutes or 75 minutes of meaningful work at home outside of your lessons those days. So, mention that.
Thank you,
Anything
Sam.
else coming up, Holly?
Yeah, there's a second question to that. Also, how many days are left until the 13th when the surveys are due?
Well, thank you for asking. And I mentioned this very early in the hour, but if you've just tuned in, 6:49 p.m. on Tuesdays right now, and basically 30 hours from now, I would like you to have the survey done. So less than 2 days. So if you could just take some time, it's not long, take some time, identify your needs in that survey. We do ask for your email address in that survey. Specifically, it's because we're asking, do you need a computer? Do you need childcare? Do you need internet access? And if you do, we want to know who you are so we can follow up with you. And then I just know it's a frustrating time and you're getting lots of surveys, but the surveys are one way we really keep in touch by getting quick answers from you. So we've tried to make it very short. So check your email. There was a voicemail sent out also to families today with my voice. So I left you a voicemail. I called you up. I don't like sending recordings by phone, but I have heard that it's a good way for some people who might have just, it slipped their mind or they didn't check their email to remind them that it came. So it's in an email today. It's also an email we sent last week, Thursday and Friday. So finish that before the end of the day tomorrow. Before you go to bed tomorrow. You can do it right now.
It looks like Jennifer has a hand up.
Oh, Jennifer. I'm going to allow you to talk, Jennifer. Hey, welcome.
Mm-hmm.
And Jennifer, you don't have to talk, but with your hand up, I did allow you to. And so if you'd like to say something, go for it.
Oh, her hand's down.
Hand down.
So there's another question.
That's okay, Jennifer. Maybe you bumped your hand up button.
Another question that came in. If a family opts for distance learning, but at some point wishes to change to on-site care, is that okay? Also, can they do on-site care 2 or 3 days a week? What is the level of flexibility?
So yes, Sinead, and I'll go more deeply into this next week, but I know there's 2 parts to that question. So the first is, can you change your model that you've opted into through the year? Absolutely, yes. Will you need to give us some notice, just like we're giving you notice about switching models? Absolutely, yes. So the survey on the 13th, when it's done, we'll analyze it, and then likely on the 20th, we'll need you to, frankly, opt in if you need to opt in for on-site care, and do that with a kind of commitment that if you indicated it in the 13th, great. But then specifically, if you want to say change from on-site care to being at home, we even want to know that, right? So if you start at home though this year, you can definitely opt later to have on-site care some days a week or all days a week. And this is where I'll go more into this next week, but one mitigation strategy that I've seen and read about and really researched is whether or not it's possible to pod a certain group of students at school so that they're not making contact with other students. We are using that technique, especially with younger students, right? So elementary classrooms generally will not be socializing or even physically distancing with other elementary classrooms hardly at all. Because those elementary students have siblings and or family members and or rode the bus with someone and or their parents are actually really good friends with someone who's got a college student and they saw each other, we can't bet that that's going to be a really containable bubble. And so what we're going to do is pod students together for our purposes, but I just want families to understand that some of those students are still in aftercare and before care, and we can't keep them in their pod in aftercare and before care. They're physically distanced, they're going to have a mask on, they're going to be doing all the mitigation protocols. However, because some students are coming for after and before care and or just supervision a couple days a week, and some are coming 5 days a week, those pod bubbles, we're going to still try to keep them under 30, but they're likely not just going to be, say, the 12 kids are in your classroom who are there for on-site supervision. So we are following all CDC guidelines, and I just wanted to mention that sort of difference between mitigation and prevention. I'll go more into that next week, but you can switch through the week. You can also just opt in for a couple days of care, or you could opt in for 5 days of care. We just want to know by the 13th, basically from everybody, what you think you're going to do now. And we will have a formal way through the year for you to give us notice if you want to opt from being at home in. If you need to opt out of being at school, that's something you can do with less notice, though we would like to know as much as possible. But if you need to opt from being at home into care, that's going to be something that takes at least a week, but likely 2. Just give you a heads up. All right. Well, Holly, I think we've answered questions. I gave an overview for those of you who tuned in a little bit late. For those of you who stayed the whole time and didn't have a question, thank you so much for being here with me. And I have been hearing from a lot of folks who watch these or listen to these on their own time. So we still just run and count. If you're starting a pool at home or at your virtual office, no one's talked yet besides me and Holly. When will it happen? Who might? I thought it might happen today, but it didn't. Yeah, no pressure. But if you'd like to put your hand up and talk, work up to it. Okay. Well, happy Tuesday, all, and we'll do this again on Thursday, and we'll have more specifics and announcements about health protocols late next week. So take care.
Have a good evening.
Yeah. Bye now.
Bye.